Joe Biden lived at this Scranton house until he was 10 years old. It was the home of his grandfather, Ambrose Finnegan. He was told many times the story of his Irish roots. It's a story he's clearly never forgotten.
My grandfather, Ambrose Finnegan, every time I walk out of his house, he'd say, "Joey, remember, the best drop of blood in you is Irish." If you forgive the poor attempt at Irish, Tama Shah Walia. I'm at home.
President Biden clearly takes pride in his Irish heritage.
As long as I can remember, it's been sort of part of my soul.
He enjoys dropping old Irish sayings into conversation.
If you're lucky enough to be Irish, well, you're lucky enough.
And when presented with a Mongolian horse, named the animal Celtic.
The United States was shaped by Ireland, and that's not hyperbole.
The influence of Biden's Irish roots has long been seen in his political rhetoric. His speeches, for example, often make references to Irish poetry.
You know, as the great Irish poet Seamus Heaney once wrote, history says, don't hope on this side of the grave. But then, once in a lifetime, the longed-for tidal wave of justice rises up, and hope and history rhyme. My background and the background of my family is Irish American. And we have a long history of not fundamentally unlike the Palestinian people with Great Britain and their attitude toward Irish Catholics.
And you talk about Biden and these politicians. I think there's that they all want to be Kennedy, and they're not. That's the thing too that still goes back. I mean, Biden, he's so old. I mean, he practically served with Kennedy, and they all want to be. I mean, is he really Irish? That would be kind of my question. But
his ancestors, the Finnegans, left the area for a new life in America in 1839.
Howdy, welcome to Family History Fanatics, where we love helping you to climb your family tree and have fun along the way. We'll all look at how far back in time we would need to go for a certain percentage. Well, on average, we know that we get 50% of our DNA from our parents, and that halves again each generation going back. So from this, we can start to build a chart. And in this chart here is it's showing, first off, how many generations back, what percentage of DNA, which is just having each generation, and then that relationship. So we start with our parents and grandparents, go up to great-grandparents, all the way to the 6th great-grandparents at 8 generations back. And then also I added a column here for approximately how many years ago that person was the same age as you. So I just used 25 years in general. So you can see by 8 generations using that, it's about 200 years ago, which for most genealogy, you know, that's back to the early 1800s. A lot of records start to die off before that. So you might be able to find a nice paper trail back to the 6th great-grandparents.
My grandfather, Ambrose Finnegan, every time I walk out of his house, he'd say, "Joey, remember, the best drop of blood in you is Irish."
I think there's that they all want to be Kennedy. And
citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
In replying to his welcome, President Kennedy referred to himself as one of millions of Irish descent who had kept a place in their ancestral memory for the green and misty Isle. And in that sense, he was indeed returning home. As President Kennedy inspects the honor guard, thousands crowd the surrounding buildings to get a glimpse at this dominant world leader, whose courage and zeal had rekindled hope in the hearts of free men. The greeting given to President Kennedy in Ireland had a warmness and depth surpassing anything experienced by any previous visitor to Ireland. This greeting also expressed the esteem of the Irish people for the United States, with the remembrance that the United States contributed so much to the hopes of the Irish nation during the dark days of the 18th and 19th centuries. Leaving the airport, the motorcade made its way through O'Connell Street in the heart of Dublin. Thousands have lined the streets for hours to honor the first American president who has come to visit them.
We talk about Biden and these politicians. I think there's that they all want to be Kennedy, and they're not.
And the closing comment I make, you see this tie I have with a shamrock on it? This was given to me by one of these guys right here. Was a hell of a rugby player, and they beat the hell out of the black and tans. Oh, God, it was but
I mean, Biden, he's so old. I mean, he practically served with Kennedy.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of man.
In the first grade, my older teacher used to have 4 big pictures of US presidents hanged up on her wall. When asked by the children on who exactly were those men, she replied simply that the first man was the first president of the United States, the second man freed the slaves, and the third man was the current president at that time. The fourth man, however, was the only one who wasn't a painting or in a colored photo, and when asked exactly who he was, she would simply reply that he was her favorite president.
And so, in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Every year is my fucking year.